Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be building this transmission here, which is the th400. But before we get into that, I'd like to say thanks to everyone who subscribes, watches, and all that other good stuff. Recently made it past 1,000 subscribers, and that's quite a milestone. I probably should have did a giveaway or something, but I have no idea what to give away. Might do something down the road for. But anyways, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. Share with anyone you know that might enjoy these videos. We're going to get started on rebuilding this transmission. So, need to take this over to where there's some heat because it's freaking cold over here. It's like 12 degrees. Well, there's the thermometer I have hanging in here. See if we can zoom in on it, and you can see how freaking cold it is over here. 10, 11, yep, about 12 degrees. Too damn cold. Now, before I take the transmission over there where there's some heat, we'll have a look at it. Now, this is a 1968 th400. And I have had this transmission for a long time. And down here is a tag. It tells you what year it is. Probably hard to see, but it says 68 on it, and it is CD is the code, and that comes up as a 68 Impala. That's exactly what I took it out of. It even still has the original vacuum modulator on it. Now, a long time ago at a pull your own auto parts place, they brought in the car that this was in. It had a 327 in it. A friend of mine wanted that motor, and he was for sure it was going to be a 327 4-bolt. Well, he pulled the motor out, tore it all apart, and it was just a 2-bolt. I have yet to see a factory 327 4-bolt main engine. Never seen one. I don't even think they exist. Anyways, it was easy pickings for the transmission, so I took the transmission. And that's been a long time ago. I was still in high school at the time. I was probably like in, I want to say, 1991. So that's how long ago that transmission was taken out. And it's been sitting in storage. I knew one day I'd have a use for it. Because I have a car that I've had forever too. That I bought when I was in high school. From a kid I went to school with. It was in my class. It was a 69 Chevelle. 2-door hardtop, and that's going in it. But we're going to rebuild it first. Actually, I want to flip it up here. I want to show you something too I thought was kind of neat on it. Alright, got the transmission flipped up so I can show you what I thought was kind of neat on it. But if you look right there, it's kind of hard to see. It actually comes in better if it gets wet. It's better down here a little bit. There we go. Now see that? That's the letters C and D. And that is the factory stamp or paint code or whatever GM put on the transmission that matches the tag back here. Which says CD 68 CD. That's for all your restorers out there. If you got a 68 Impala, that's where your code should be stamped on your transmission on your th400. But I've had this transmission so long, it's been sitting, starting to grow fungus on it. See that green stuff? It's even on the modulator down there. Anyways, I'm going to take it over where there's some heat. I'm going to tear it apart, and I'm going to set the camera up so you can watch me tear it apart. Also, I had to modify my tranny stand here. Before we had the bolt on the inside going up this way, but obviously there's not enough room on this transmission to fit. So apparently all your little pivot mount deals are not in the same spot on all the transmissions. That's my little T-handle to turn it. This is caliper bolts out of my S10 that I built. They were junk anyways, but they were good for that. Alright, got the transmission over here where there's some heat, and I'm going to let it warm up for a while. I don't want to tear it apart while it's still cold. It makes my fingers cold. I don't like having cold fingers. Anyways, being this is a 68 transmission, there's a lot of good stuff about it being a 68 and some not so good stuff, because there's some mods you gotta do inside the transmission. That I will talk about that and show that as we do it. Alright, got the transmission part, got all the guts out of it. Now, one of the first things we need to look at is the case lugs down in here, to see if they're broke or not. From what I can see, they look fine. Now the reason why you need to look at that is on these older transmissions, there is no spacer ring down in here. There's a thin spacer ring that goes around in there. The GM, I believe, if I remember right, is around 69 or 70. They found out that the center support, the bushings start getting more, and it's got hard shifting. In a second, it'll rattle in there, and it'll bust those lugs out. So they put a steel shim around in there, and they machined the center support. Maybe we can compare these two. This is the one out of it, which is the 68 transmission, and this one here is one that I grabbed out of a newer transmission that should be machined. See if we can see the difference here. Might be hard to see. There, I think you can see it. See the difference in the thickness of the lugs? As you can see, the lugs on this one are thinner than the lugs on this one. And that's why I grabbed this center support years ago also at the junkyard when we were tearing up some transmissions to get extra parts. Grabbing the good sprag drums out of them and stuff like that, which you should have just been taking the whole transmission. Because back then, when you could buy the whole train for $25. I think there might have been a $5 pour on it. Now you go to these places, they want $150 for a junk train that probably needs rebuilt. Anyways, that's one thing that needs to be addressed on this older transmission. When you're working on it, you should upgrade it. Another thing, if you look down inside there at the needle bearing, see how far apart the needle bearings are spaced? Newer ones have twice the amount of needle bearings in it, so there's easily one in between it, and that makes it a lot stronger too. What I can see of this transmission, it looks like it probably would have worked. But these are the kinds of transmissions I like to get my hands on. Virgin transmissions that no one's screwed with or messed with, because most of those transmission places, and I mean there's a lot, that's why I started rebuilding transmissions myself. I've seen the kind of work they do. Most of it's real shoddy work. Here's the band. Actually, it's just a tad burnt, but we got new parts. It's the intermediate clutches, which you can tell the original GM because they have those numbers on them right there. I'm guessing that's some kind of code for something. They're not burnt. They don't look too bad. You know, you take these drums apart. Check out the clutches in there in the forward and the direct. And the low band, we need to check it out, but a lot of times you can look at the reaction carrier and see if it's got grooves wore in it. That one looks pretty respectable. Here's just a little bit grooving in the middle, but it's not bad. We'll probably have to pull that low band out of there and see how it looks. See if it's flaking or just by feeling it. Feels like there's quite a bit of meat on it still. Usually the only time those wear if you're mainly pulling it in the low. Especially like in pickups or heavy trucks, stuff like that when you want to slow down. I did have a little bit of trouble trying to get the speedometer out. It needs to be soaked. It's stuck in there. And the good thing is no bolts twisted off. A lot of times these bolts will twist off and then you got problems. Well, from what I can see so far, everything looks pretty decent. Nothing major broke. Wasn't really nothing in the pan. It's got an old AC filter in it too. I assume that is not the original filter that was in the tranny, but it could be, because most people don't change oil on anything. I'm kind of guilty of that a little bit myself too. Need to change the oil on my S10 transmission oil. Like I say, I can see everything looks respectable. Probably would have worked. But the only thing when these trannies are that old, everything will look good, but when you take the lip seals out, they'll be cracked. We got some upgrades and some mods to do to this tranny. But so far, so good. I'm happy. Need to order some parts tomorrow, so it's free freight day on Tuesdays. One thing I wanted to show you people too. Really hasn't got a lot to do with this transmission, but it has to do with transmissions in general. Over here is my pile of books. But here's where I get my transmission parts from. And when I opened an account, I can't remember what year it was. It's been quite a while ago with them. It's a wholesale place. This is the catalog book of all the transmissions that were made at the time that you could get parts for, which I assume it would be every vehicle on the road. All the white is domestic, and all the blue is foreign vehicles. Now see how thick that book is? Now this is the new book they gave me in 18 and 19, because I was still using that one, and the part numbers weren't coming up right. But that's how thick the damn book is now. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? Because there's way more vehicles on the road today, I guess. Probably most of them in that book ain't even on the road anymore. But that is a thick ass book. Anyways, enough of me complaining and bitching. I'm going to kind of tear some of this stuff apart, look at the clutches, and if nothing's really wrong with it, I'm not going to show it. So we got to do a little more cleaning and inspecting. I can't do nothing until I get parts. So. Alright, here's something else that needs to be upgraded. Now, being this is a 68 transmission, it came factory with a second gear sprag type clutch in it, not the newer roller style that they went to in around 71, I believe. It's right in that area somewhere, but it's good that it has the better sprag on it, because the roller clutches will go bad. But if you look at it, there's not that many little dog bone deals in it. I believe this is 16 element if I remember right. We make a 32 element, which of course we put one right in the middle. Kind of similar to those needle bearings. There's twice as many of them. So it's going to get that too. Now this is one of the reasons why I started building transmissions. Because a lot of those places, they'll steal your good drum and they'll put the junk newer roller clutch style in it. How'd that happen? So after you get screwed, you get kind of pissed, kind of start doing stuff yourself. Also, they make 4L80s have a spiral ring that's better than just a snap ring, so I might stick one of them on it too. I think I got some 4L80 drums around here somewhere. Other than that, I took them apart and the clutches look like brand new in them, so I might end up using all these clutches over, because I don't really see anything wrong with them. But I am going to put new seals in all the drums, because usually that's what goes bad. The rubber gets hard and it cracks and splits and then it doesn't work right. So all you do is clean up some stuff and start rebuilding. New bushings and new seals and all that good stuff. Managed to get the case nice and clean. I went and washed her off so the insides are nice and clean. The first thing I did is install the bushing down there. It's a no walk bushing. I use this handy dandy bushing installer I actually made to install cam bearings, and that just happens to be the same size as a big block Chevy. So look down in there and there's the new bushing. You can see it there, put a little light up this way. Anyways, that's the first thing I did. Now need to disassemble the whole rear part of the transmission and check out the internal guts in there. As you get the center support all cleaned up and the piston all cleaned up too, we need to install the new seals, and also 3 springs come, and most of these from the factory unless it's Cadillac. So I'm going to install 6 springs in it, and we're going to take the springs out of the original center support that came out of the transmission. Managed to get the piston in, put the new seals on, and basically just, I usually use feeler gauge by around 7 to 9 thousandths and just go around there, and then go around the rubber around there, and it'll work itself down in. We got the 6 springs in it. I just need to stick the little return spring plate on it. It sticks on there like that without knocking the springs out. And put that on, and we'll be done with the center support. Center support is finished. Got the spring plate on and the snap ring down in there. Only thing we need to do to this before we install it, just put the Teflon rings on here. And you only install 3. Leave this one out. And that's part of dual feeding the direct clutch. And also when we get to the case, we'll have to plug this hole here. And some people put a tap it and put a plug in it. We got the rear plantaries apart. Tail shaft. And clean all this stuff up. But I need to stick those needle bearings in it that have more rollers. As you can see, that one does not have any rollers. There's also a bushing I need to replace. That's not in this part. Anyways, here's those needle bearings that have more rollers in them. There's 3 of them in the transmission, so I got all 3. Just need to clean all this stuff up and get the rear part of the transmission put together. Once I get all that cleaned up, switch those needle bearings, and put a new bushing in the reaction carrier. Should be able to install all those pieces back together and install it in the transmission. I got all the individual pieces cleaned up. The tail shaft, which is a car tail shaft, not a truck tail shaft. And all you do is put this stuff back together. But here's the needle bearing that goes in there inside the little carrier races, and this goes in one way. There's like a flange there, and that goes back in that hole. And on this side it goes this way. I like that. I need to lube it up, stick that back together. Okay, I got the rear tail shaft made with the plantaries, and now I need to install this bushing in the reaction carrier, which I already removed the original one. But this bushing here, I would say, takes the most abuse in the transmission. That bushing is always worn, and it should be replaced anytime you got it apart, unless you just recently replaced it. But you need to press that down in there. That'll be done. I have a brand new low roller clutch for there. I got the needle bearings down in there. And here's a look at those side by side. There it is. That's the older one with not as many rollers, and that's the newer one with a whole bunch of rollers, and that's what you want to put in your transmission. Discard these ones. That's mostly on your older transmissions, have those. I'm trying to think up to what year they did that, but I've been late 60s, early 70s, somewhere around in there. Of course, that's the other one that has not as many rollers in it too. We also need to put the shim, not the shim, but the thrust washer back there. That's the one out of it. We're going to put a new one in it. So we also need to replace that plastic one you've seen there with a new brass one that goes down inside of there. But first I need to press this in. Got the bushing in the reaction carrier, the new bushing. Got the new low roller clutch in there. Just came in that thing. It's going in the trash. Also got the brass thrust washer down inside there. There's also one back here, which is the exact same thrust washer. Just one's on one side and one's on the other. Now I need to slide this onto there. I got this little plastic anti-clunk spacer. And then we can set it inside the transmission. Alright, got the reaction carrier back on the plantaries, and now we can take this and slide it down inside the transmission. What you should be able to do, just grab a hold of this. It's pretty heavy. Bring it over here to the inside of the transmission, and it should slide right down in there as a whole assembly. And there we got her down in there. There, it's seated. Now it's down in there. We got that part all done. We have the center support done, which is pretty much ready to set down in there too, but I need to go get that spacer ring like I showed earlier. It sits in the case right behind the lugs here. And it goes down inside the case and sits on that little edge down. I gotta go get that and all my hoarding of transmission parts. We're getting along pretty good on it. I could rebuild the direct drum, put new seals in it, and put a 34 element sprag in it. But there is the bushing out of the reaction carrier. And that's how I get them out. I just take a die grinder with a carbide ball on it and cut it right along there, and when it gets loose enough it'll grab it and spin it and it'll come right out. Now I went and sourced my little spacer ring that goes down inside the case there, and I also installed the Teflon seals where they need to be, leaving that one out because we're dual feeding the direct. And I got the brass thrust washer installed up in there, and the needle bearing race is poked in the back there, right there. So that's ready to install as soon as we put this little ring down in the case. Good enough, we're done. Alright, spacer ring's down in there. I think before I was showing the wrong spot to put it in, it might not have either, but it sits right there on that ledge. I always put the open end gap where the pin is. I'll grab a flashlight, you can probably see that a little better. A little dark down in there. There you can see it. The little ring goes all the way around down in there. There you can see the end gap. I need to slide it that way a little bit, but also got the needle bearing down in there. And we should be good to install the center support. Now we can check the rear end plate. The center support is in. I still need to put the retaining ring on top of the center support, and need to install the center support bolt there, and I also need to plug that hole there. I'm pretty sure I got some plugs for that. That's part of the dual feeding the direct clutch. You need to plug that hole off there. Other than that, once I get that ring in and get the bolt in, we can check the rear end plate. And somewhere here the ring is. It's one of those rings right there. Should be this beveled in here. Yep, it's that one right there. Anytime you're installing these, the bevels always go up or out. You want the flat part against the working area, I guess you call it. We'll get that cleaned up, get the center support bolt cleaned up, and we'll get this all installed. Probably call it good for tonight. It's getting late. We'll check the end plate tomorrow. Okay, I got the center support bolt in. Still need to tighten it down. I got the retaining ring for the center support down in there. I need to tighten the center support bolt down, and how you do that, how they recommend, is you get a screwdriver or something and stick in either that hole or that hole, usually this hole, and pry up on it and then tighten the bolt down to the torque spec. Kind of helps, I guess, hold it where it needs to be in there. That's what they recommend doing. And if the rear end plate comes out within spec, which I hope it should, we should be able to move right along, work on the direct and the forward and the pump, and we'll pretty much be getting the valve all the way together, besides some mods I needed to do to the valve body. Well, like I say, this will be fairly straightforward rebuilding. The forwards, I want to stick thick steels in it, so we'll have to put the piston on the lathe. And I got some mods I need to do to the pump too. There's a Sonax boost valve I like to put in these. In case the case is worn, it might not be worn, but anyways, that's going to be good enough for today. I'll get back on this tomorrow. It'll be a lot nicer if it's warm out too. I can get this done a little quicker because it sucks. I gotta go over on the other side to clean parts, and it's frickin' cold over there. Last night it was 5 below. It's probably 15 degrees over there now, but anyways, get some more done tomorrow. Well, I got the center support retaining bolt tightened down, it's torqued down, and I checked the end play, which is back up inside here in this hole, which is kind of hard to see. Anyways, you check back in there the feeler gauge between the rear shim and the thrust washer. Now that calls for 7s, 19 thousandths, and we have 10 thousandths, so that's perfect. And also, we got the governor cleaned up. You need to lube that up and install it in there for good, but right at the moment I'm cleaning this cover up. And I'm also cleaning up the speedometer gear to go in there. Once we get that done, we'll move on to the intermediate clutches, and we need to do the direct, and we also need to put new bushings in the sun gear shaft because they're a little on the loose side. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but she's got a little rattle to her, so we're going to put some bushings in there. I got the speedometer housing cleaned up. Got a new O-ring there, and there's also a new seal down inside of here installed. This right here is the little tiny seal that goes in there. There's the new O-ring. Got the governor cover cleaned up, the new gasket, and I'm going to go ahead and install this stuff. Speedometer gear and the housing is installed, and got the cover on the governor. So now we're going to install the bushings in the sun gear shaft. First we got to get the old ones out. Alright, getting ready to install the bushings in the sun gear shaft, and I have the bushings cooling, chilling in the refrigerator, and I have the sun gear shaft over here sitting on the stove warming up. Getting pretty warm. That helps the bushings go in. And in my experience, those are the freaking worst bushings to put in that sun gear shaft. I'm going to try to stick them in here real quick. Get the bushings a little cooler in the fridge and the shaft a little warmer on the stove. Well, I got the bushings in the sun shaft, and I got her down in there all lubed up. Pull her back out here and have a look-see. But it's got new bushings in the end. It worked out real good. Way tighter than she was. Get it turned right here to go down in there, because there's slots on the older style. They only go in one way, whereas the newer ones, they're not made like that. There's all kinds of stuff they upgraded and changed on these over the years. Take an hour to find the groove. It'd probably be easier just got a flashlight and look down in the hole, but there, I got it back in the spot. There she goes. It's down in there now. It's a lot tighter than she was. So now I'll probably move on to the direct clutch. Go clean it up, take it apart, put new seals in it, new springs and all that stuff. Now instead of going on to the direct clutch, I kind of spaced the intermediates, but I got the pressure plate cleaned up for the intermediates. And I'm going to use new clutches. I have the band and the intermediates soaking right now. But they'll soak for a while. A lot of people don't soak them, but I prefer to soak them. We'll install them dry. That's a no-no on an automatic transmission. There's also some clutches down in there from when I rebuilt a 4+3 Borg Warner unit in a Corvette from years back. Got the ring cleaned up too. We're just going to let that soak a while. Install the intermediates. Now the intermediate clutches and the pressure plate and the retaining ring are all installed. Next is going to be the band. The band is soaking in oil in here, and it should be ready to install also. We just need to pull it out. I'm getting my fingers all oily. Once we get that down in there, then we will start on the direct clutch, which is right there, and I pointed this out probably 10 times by now, but that's next.